All right, number 4, in a series of super one-sided matches, these were fairly similar setups, at least in what they were trying to do. What was the big change that made the one team just completely annihilate the other one?
Well, I'm not sure if losing that Cyclone changed their opinion of how much DPS they actually had, so they went after that Jaguar. But like Ivy said, they needed to get the DPS off the field, and the Curse, I think, was okay for the setup, but they would have done better with more DPS because you saw the 2 Sleipnirs and 4 Cyclones from the other side. So they just didn't have the DPS, I don't think.
I was actually in the bathroom for the first part, so when I got back, it looked like Dark Taboo really isn't doing that well.
It certainly didn't. There's also a little bit of difference in the smaller ships. So Godfathers had Sabers, I think, supporting them, and Dark Taboo had Kitsunes.
Yep.
So what's the difference in those choices?
Well, you get the ECM bonus on the electronic attack frigate, which is probably why they brought the Curse instead of another Sleipnir, is they used the extra points on the EAF. I think the EAFs were decent because the ECM just has such a great effect in these tournaments. But like I said, the Curse just I don't think was a good choice for this match, or just like the Basilisk. They needed something that didn't anchor them down.
Mm-hmm. I think the Kitsunes are just so strong for the points, and I actually don't like interdictors in the Sabers. I think that assault frigates are stronger for the same role, and I just don't think their SIG is too large. They're not quite as fast as they could be. And I also like destroyers a little bit better. They're for the same amount of points.
All right. So Group B, we've wrapped up now. We've wrapped up Group A, and this was Group B. Let's just see where we're at right now. So Agony Empire on top with Godfathers as well. Does this kind of look like you thought the group would?
Obviously not, but
I mean, I would have thought Fatal Ascension would have done better, and they're smack down at the bottom.
Yeah, and I would have thought Dark Taboo would have done better. They had a okay setup first weekend, and second weekend they had I thought a really good setup, and then this weekend they just crashed and plummeted and burned.
And I mean, so Fatal Ascension, or sorry, Agony Empire brought that super ECM setup. Is that too gimmicky to bring 2 matches in a row?
It's all about how much information the other team has. Like, you might be scared of it coming again and fit ECM, or you might say, oh, well, they fielded that once. They'll never field something like that again. So it just becomes a rock, paper, scissors sort of thing. Like, you're playing a blind guessing game unless you have the intel that you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is wild card because those rooks could have been loaded up with Galente and Mimitar type jams because that's what we see primarily of. But a team could just instead just go with straight Amar, and then their jams have a lot less strength since they won't be the same race.
So what breaks this type of ECM setup? Like when they go onto the field, what are they hoping not to see on the other side?
They're hoping not to see a ton of drone boats. They're hoping not to see a ton of Amar ships because they likely don't have the jammers. They're hoping not to see a bunch of ECCM hardened battleships or a full 12 setup that can maybe high damage ship where if one misses a jam, they're suddenly going to snap kill like 2 Kitsunes. So there's a lot of things that counter this, especially if you know it's coming. But overall, it's pretty strong, especially with that bonus Proteus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably the strongest part of this is the wild card aspect, like Michael Bolton was talking about. The other team, let's say, have really good intel. They're not going to know if that setup's coming back next round or if they're going to go with a complete different setup to counter if they bring ECM, like a straight rush setup.
If both teams don't have intel, the only advantage that if they were to field it again that they give the other team is the other team has had time to think about that setup, so they know what primaries to call. They've seen that setup, they know their setup, and they're saying, how can I best beat this team?
Do you know, like talking about Amar setups being one of the weaknesses, I think bringing this ECM setup is really clever. I'm looking at the stats right now from our ISD guys who've been collecting the stats, and you can of course go to their page and check out all the stuff they've collected. They have like stats on races, ships, and everything. And from the qualifiers, Amar was used less than Pirate Faction. Like Minmatar absolutely in the top, Caldari the second. Third most used, 166 ships was Galente. 35 Amar ships. Like if you're weak against Amar, that's probably a good setup for this tournament. Is that likely to change now that the format's gone from 6 to 12 ships?
Well, I mean, you get the Oracle. The Oracle has a lot of DPS, and it has probably the best tank out of the new T3 battlecruisers. So I think the Oracles are strong. Ryvie likes the Apsos. I don't really like the Apsos. And there's 16 points. I think there's a much better ship you can fit for that 16 points.
Yeah.
But overall, every year we don't really see as much more. I think last year you saw a neutralizing setup fielded by Darkside that they used to counter PL. So I think we might actually see a variation of that setup again, which was a straight MR with neutralized from curses and I think Baelgorns.
Yeah, I think that was what it was. So we do have a bit of a graphic about team setups and points and all that stuff that you guys can talk us through that we're going to get up now.
Yeah, so on the screen you see a Inventory Rush type team as well as a ECM type team. Because you got the Rook, you get the Curse. The real focus of the ECM team is to jam them out and then use the Curse to turn off their hardeners, because ECM team's low on DPS. So if they can neutralize the cap away from the primary target, then he won't be able to tank as well, and they can burn through it a little bit quicker. T3s are kind of a wild card because they do provide a lot of variety in different fits, but they're also 16 points like a command ship.
Yeah. If we can just keep this up here for just a few minutes and talk points. I mean, of course, these two setups you see here are just like theoretical. How could you divide it into different setups? What are we thinking about the point cost right now? There was some questions about the tier battleships, that tier 3 battleships are cheaper than tier 2 battleships. What would you guys say about a question like that?
Well, you're talking about battle cruisers, but I think that the tier 2 battle cruisers are sort of a little more versatile. They have a stronger tank. They're a little more survivable. The tier 3s are just tremendous amounts of damage, but it's battleship-sized gun damage. So oftentimes they won't be able to hit some of these smaller, powerful frigates like the assault frigates.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's important to note here that it's how the points are arranged makes the ships good or bad. How many ships they cost. And with the new format, bringing 12 ships is almost always better than bringing a smaller number of ships with just higher point ships. So it's all about how many slots you have across the whole team, where your bonuses are, how you're spending your points and allocating your points. So that's why we see so many battlecruisers. Battlecruisers are, especially command ships, are really strong for their points, like the Sleipnir. The T1 battlecruisers are so strong for their points, like the Cyclone. And then you see less battleships just because they're great ships, but they just cost so many points.
Right. Well, also the tier 2 battlecruisers, you have the ability to fit a Ganglank, which Ganglanks are huge in the tournament type setting. You have the shield harmonizing link, which gives a resist bonus. So especially with the ASBs so popular this tournament, the higher resist on the shields, less damage, and then you have the velocity for the skirmish bonuses and stuff like that.
So now that T-Rex isn't in the tournament anymore, are we likely to see T1 Industrials at 3 points?
I wish they would lower the cost for T1 Industrials.
What would you use them then?
Actually, good point. Badger 2s have a tremendous amount of mid slots, which makes them excellent E-war platforms. I theorized before I saw how the ASBs worked this year, when they were just sort of coming out on Singularity, that maybe the size that they would require in boosters would be so large that you would have to have a hauler bring more boosters and then like run like a water boy in between your boosting ships.
I think that was what T-Rex used them for last year, for cap charges, to just have them there and sit there and just feed. I think it was the battleships or something.
Well, they're not very tanky, but they do have a lot of mid-slots with Badger, but I don't think you'll see many of the other ones.
All right, well, that's a shame. We're going into Group C. That is, of course, the Test Alliance group. Let's see. So we have Mildly Intoxicated versus Alpha Volley Union. Laz, what do you think?
I think Mildly Intoxicated is a much stronger team. They do have Uki, like we were talking about earlier, from Black Legion last year. So he's a strong theorycrafter, strong tournament guy. And I don't like Absolutions, which Alpha Volley Union has brought twice. So.
I like Mildly Intoxicated well, especially I think they might tip the scales for the left side, allowing Test Alliance to then come back and even it out in the next match.
All right.
I'll go with Molly as well.
I like being mildly intoxicated.